Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Naruto is Madara's and Hashirama's grandson and is very OP and smart. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Leave a comment if you want to suggest a fanfic for me to read. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let's begin. Chapter 54. First stage steps were heard echoing along a dark corridor. The walls were made completely out of dark stone and it was almost pitch black if not for a couple of torches that provided some much needed light. The person walked calmly through the halls, completely undisturbed by some background noises that could be heard. The person stepped forward into some light, allowing some features to be displayed. The man appeared as a frail, old man, who was walking with a cane in his left hand. He had black, shaggy hair, and his right eye was bandaged. He has had an X-shaped scar on his chin ever since his youth. He wore a white shirt, with a black or dark gray robe over the top of it covering from his feet, to just over his right shoulder. The robe conceals his right arm which was bandaged, and covered with 3 big golden braces. The man kept walking forward until he reached what resembled a reception desk. It seemed somewhat strange to find a reception desk in what clearly resembled catacombs, but he didn't seem surprised. Danzo-sama, what can I do for you? The man behind the desk asked, bowing to the elder. I wish to speak with one of the inmates, Danzo simply said in a monotone voice. Of course. Which one? The receptionist asked and Danzo approached him, whispering the inmate's name. I'm afraid that he's under special circumstances. Hokage-sama has forbidden any visitor, the receptionist explained weakly. I trust that won't be a problem, right? Danzo asked, his voice betraying none of his displeasure. Although his voice was calm, it was far enough to scare the poor receptionist to death. Of course not. Right this way, the receptionist said, gulping and leading Danzo towards the right cell. Here we are, the man said and Danzo stepped forward, peering into the cell. Leave us, Danzo ordered and the receptionist quickly obeyed, proceeding to bolt from there. Danzo shifted his attention back to the man inside the cell. The man was clad in simple gray jumpsuit. The particular thing about this man was that he was missing his right arm. What pitiful state you're in, Hiyashi, Danzo said, and the man inside the cell opened his eyes to reveal the Byakugan. Come to gloat, Danzo? Hiyashi asked weakly. He was a broken man, everything he ever fought for had been stolen from his hands. Hardly, Danzo replied before taking a good look at him. Hiyashi was huddled in the corner, concealed by the shadows. I've come with an offer, Danzo explained. Really? Hiyashi asked suspiciously. And what could you possibly offer me? Hiyashi asked, somewhat amused by the man's attempts. You should be more grateful. Tsunade wanted to ship you away to the blood prison, Danzo said, and shiver ran down Hiyashi's spine. As to my offer, how about your clan back in justice against those who put you in here? Danzo offered but was met with laugh. Hiyashi was laughing loud like some crazy man. You are delusional, Danzo. How exactly do you wish to accomplish such feat? Hiyashi asked, amused. You still have faithful followers from the main house that occupy several positions of power in the village. All I ask is your and their cooperation, and, in return, all will give you your freedom and clan back, Danzo offered, and Hiyashi was about to laugh again when he saw the serious face of Danzo. You are serious? Hiyashi stated, surprised. I don't joke, Danzo replied, and Hiyashi started thinking. What are you planning? Hiyashi asked seriously. All the laughter and the amusement gone. I shall tell you if you agree to my terms, Danzo replied. I accept, Hiyashi said, and Danzo nodded and simply turned around, flicking something over his shoulder towards Hiyashi. What's this? Hiyashi asked as he snatched the small ball. It seemed like a food pill. Your freedom, Danzo said and walked out, leaving Hiyashi to his choices. Hiyashi lost sight of Danzo and returned his gaze back to the pill in his hand. Making his choice, he globed it with a shred of hesitation and waited for the effects. Hiyashi's chest started warming up and suddenly he clutched to his chest as pain shot through his body. Arghhhhhhhhh. Hiyashi screamed as he felt his chest tithing up, making it almost impossible to breathe. Several guards rushed towards Hiyashi's cell, but they were too late and simply found him lying on the ground, completely unmoving. One the guards opened the cell and crouched beside him. He's dead, the guard replied, checking his pulse. He took notice as to how his single hand was clutching to his chest. Most likely a heart attack. Inform the Hokage and take him away, the guard replied. Danzo smiled from the reception desk as he looked towards the receptionist, and his Sharingan glowed, erasing every evidence he ever stepped forth in the prison. Senju compound. Everything was rather quiet inside the Senju compound. It was to be expected since the loudest of the inhabitants, this being Naruto and Hashirama, had gone to Kumo. Naruto was going to participate in the upcoming Junin exams while Hashirama and his brother Tobirama would pose as their senseis. The living room in the Senju compound was simple. Outfitted with a couple of individual couches and two larger ones. A few plants in the corners and a couple of paintings in the walls made the room livelier. 3 bookcases were also nearby the wall, providing a couple of books for passing time to anyone that so wished. Some books were about the Senju clan, their history and deeds through the history, while others branched out from geography to general fiction. Jiraiya had been denied, rather painfully he might add if you ask him, his humble request to display his magnificent work on said bookshelf. Everyone in the compound was already of age, so having porn in the bookcase should be allowed. This were his thoughts when he approached his princess, who rewarded him with a well-placed, chakra-enhanced, punch. At least Tsunade had allowed him to place his first novel, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, so it wasn't all bad. Tsunade walked into the compound and simply made her way straight towards the living room. Her only thoughts were of plopping down on one of those soft couches and maybe take a nap, or something. It had been a frustrating day to say the least, and this time it wasn't paperwork that plagued her dreams. No, this time was the damn council meetings. At least she had the decency to not send a shadow clone in her stead. First, it was a request for further funding petitioned by the head nurse with both Shizune and Hinata's signatures on it. Hinata was smart enough to only sign it when she was away from the village. Shizune, however, wasn't so lucky and was on the receiving edge of a tired and pissed Senju. Next problem were those damned civilians always complaining about their rights. Tsunade shook her head, pushing away stressing thoughts as she entered the living room and was greeted with an interesting sight. She looked over to the couch where now was calmly sitting with Itachi's head on her lap. She was running her hands through his hair while Itachi had eyes closed, enjoying the moment. My, Tsunade said with clear amusement, making both of them jump at the sound of her voice. They were so entranced with each other that they didn't sense her entering the room. Who would have thought that now would be the one to tame the great Itachi Uchiha, Tsunade said, chuckling. You are one to talk, now snorted. Senju Tsunade, the legendary slug princess of Konoha, tamed by a pervert, now replied in amusement, making the Senju choke. You have something to say. Tsunade roared, making now jump from her couch and stare at Tsunade. Yes I do, old hag, now replied, smirking, sparks flying across their eyes. I was having such a good dream, Itachi thought to himself as she sat upright and watched Now and Tsunade bicker until he decided that it was enough. Now enough, Itachi's voice echoed through the room with enough authority to make both women flinch. Oh, now cooed with stars in her eyes as she rushed Itachi. I love it when you take charge, Now said, hugging Itachi while Tsunade gasped like a fish out of water. I don't even want to know, Tsunade thought as she looked over to both Uchihas and then to another couch. You don't intend to cuddle or do any display of affection, right? Tsunade wondered. It was common sense to keep public displays of affection somewhat restrained, but Uchihas were strange people. You are safe, Hokage-sama, Itachi said while Now pouted but remained by his side. You don't have to call me that in here, Itachi. Besides, officially you are still a missing shinobi, Tsunade explained, sighing in comfort as she plopped down in one of the soft couches. Respect is due where respect is due, Itachi simply replied in his traditional monotone voice. By the way, Tsunade started, what do you both intend to do now? Tsunade asked, curious. Honestly, I have no idea. I planned from the beginning to die at Sasuke's hands. I didn't count on living much longer than that because of my illness, Itachi said and felt Now grip his arm tighter. She didn't even want to consider losing Itachi. I have a proposition for both of you, Tsunade said smiling. Proposition? Now asked confused. Yes, what is your favorite color? Tsunade asked smirking while both Uchihas just stared at her like she was crazy. Kumo saying that Naruto was excited was an understatement, the man was downright thrilled. He had enough adrenaline pumping through his veins to kill a normal person. The reason for all this excitement. Dozens of competitors stood in his front. Naruto had counted at least 20 different forehead protectors, some from villages he had never even heard of. It was interesting to say the least. While these exams were non-traditional as they were only hosted every 5 years, the amount of competition was similar to that of Chunin exams. Junin did get access to higher paying missions, so maybe that was the reason. Maybe it was the honor and fame of being Junin, the elite of the village. On the other hand, Junin missions were far more difficult and risky. Hinata was amused at Naruto's expression. Any more and he would be practically bouncing like some 5-year-old kid on a sugar rush. She was surprised when she saw the amount of competition. Tsunade did say this was a big event, even bigger than the Chunin exams, but Hinata had underestimated it. Her Byakugan flared as she did a quick checkup of the competition. Only after a quick glance she could accurately guess just whose would most likely pass the earlier stages of the exams. Judging by chakra levels alone, everyone seemed normal with a few having bigger reserves, bearing high Junin level. Although she and Naruto easily dwarfed anyone in there. She had big reserves but Naruto's amount was insane. He was almost blinding to look at with her Byakugan focused on him. I don't see what the excitement is all about, Kurama said from within his mind. I sense no one of worth in here, it's not just about fighting powerful opponents Kurama. Naruto explained. Think about the jutsus we will see, the different taijutsu styles and weapons, and maybe some bloodlines, Naruto replied giddy while Kurama just sweat dropped. It's starting, Hinata whispered and Naruto quieted down almost immediately. His attention was drawn to the man walking into the stage. He was a fairly tall, dark-skinned man with a slightly bulbous nose, shaggy, white hair which covers his left eye. He wore a high-collared, sleeveless uniform with loose-fitting pants, bandages on his wrists and the one strap over one shoulder flak jacket of a Kumogakure shinobi. He supported a bored look that reminded Naruto of Kakashi. I've seen him somewhere, Naruto muttered to himself. He was the Raikage's bodyguard during our Chunin exams, Hinata said. I remember him now. I wonder how everyone else is doing around here, Naruto said out loud but was shushed by Hinata as Darui was about to speak. My name is Darui and I'm in charge of the Junin exams. I will be explaining how the exams will work, so pay attention as I will only say this once, Darui said and everyone quieted down. Much like the Chunin exams, these exams will be divided into 3 sections. In the first stage we will be an evaluation of personal and team skills in different areas. The second stage will an objective-driven race with competitive action between the teams. The third and final stage will be a tournament much like the Chunin exams. Any questions? What are the promotion specifications? Some shinobi yelled from the crowd. Only participants that reach the third stage are eligible for promotion, Darui explained. Any more questions? Darui asked but was met with silence. Very well, proceed to the barracks for testing and good luck to all of you, Darui ordered and watched as the crowd quickly dissipated into empty grounds. At the barracks Naruto's team arrived at the testing grounds where the first stage was taking place. He could feel chakra being unleashed in waves and sound of metal clashing. He figured it was some kind of physical tests. What a drag. This was the random thought of the person standing behind the counter at the barracks. She seemed to be scribbling something in some piece of paper and had an obvious bored look. They put me, a Junin, doing this, the red-haired thought to herself and sighed when she felt another team approach. State origin, team number and members, the red-haired female asked, not even bothering to raise her head to see the contestants. Konoha, team number 24, members, Senju Hinata, Senju Naruto and Sai, Hinata said and the red-haired female instantly rose her head to see Hinata's long dark blue hair and her white eyes. Hinata, the red-haired female said, surprised to see her. Karui. Hinata asked in surprise. Haven't seen since the Chunin exams, Hinata said and Karui nodded. And you brought Naruto as well, Karui said greeting the blonde who waved. So, How's life around here? Hinata asked while Naruto sat on the ground knowing very well where this was going. Sai looked at him with a puzzled expression. You'll see, Naruto muttered and pointed towards Hinata and Karui who were already deep into their conversation. They were talking like they were old friends. Sorry about Yugito-chan though, Hinata said and Karui gritted her teeth. Those zombie bastards will taste the tip of my blade, Karui snarled and Naruto rose an eyebrow. If you are talking about Kakuzu and Hidan then it's too late, I've already reduced them to ash, Naruto said and Karui was surprised to hear that they have both been killed. You killed them. Karui was skeptical but Naruto nodded nonetheless. She wanted to be the one to exact revenge and justice on them but Naruto had gotten to them first. In the end it didn't matter, they got what they deserved. Serves them right for taking Yugito-chan, thank you, Karui thanked Naruto, knowing that Yugito had been avenged. Anyways, Karui said as she started writing the details in her notebook and took a small disc with a number on it. Here is your number. Wait for your turn and good luck, see you around, Hinata replied and Naruto's team walked off and into the testing grounds. Testing grounds Naruto, Hinata and Sai entered through the stone's gates and arrived at some huge arena. There are huge stones walls surrounding the earth grounds. To Naruto's left there was what seemed to an obstacle course. Behind that was a small forest and Naruto coursed tons of booby traps spread all around the trees and ground. Welcome, the examiner said as the three contents stopped near him. The first stage of these exams consists of an advanced obstacle course, testing you in speed and strength. Additionally you will be tested in taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu and any other categories you choose for additional points. The final part will be a team exercise which consists in infiltrating an outpost located in that forest, the examiner explained, pointing towards the small forest not too far away. Teams with highest points will proceed to the second stage. Sounds simple enough, Hinata said and Naruto nodded. Which additional categories are available? Sai asked with his smiling face which seemed to scare the crap out of the examiner. Anything really. I myself am well versed in taijutsu, ninjutsu and genjutsu. Any other categories will be tested by my comrades, the examiner explained and Sai nodded. Senju Naruto, the examiner called and Naruto stepped forward. Your objective is to go through the obstacle course, collect a small flag at the end and return as fast as you can. Jutsus and/or chakra enhancement are strictly forbidden. A censor is monitoring these evaluations and any infraction means instant failure of the exams understood, the examiner warned and Naruto nodded. When you're ready, the examiner said and Naruto stepped into the line. He did a quick overlook of the obstacle course and seemed pretty straightforward. Naruto bent slightly forward, bending his knees and waiting for the examiner's signal. He shifted his attention to some blonde-haired shinobi on the right side with his eyes closed and making Ram seal. Start, the examiner said. When the sound of timer's button hit Naruto's ears, he shot forward leaving a dust trail behind. A split second after start and Naruto had already arrived at the first obstacle, a simple wooden horizontal bar, raised 1.5 meters from the ground and followed by 3 more in quick succession. Naruto jumped forward, like a lion pouncing on his target. He placed both hands in the wooden bar for support. He coiled his arms and propelled forward using his arms. Having calculated the required amount of strength he landed right past the 4 wooden bars, concluding the first obstacle in a single movement. Time. 1.5 seconds, Naruto didn't raise to his proper height before landing. He coiled himself again and blurred forward. His armor cringing, its metals plates flapping together with each step he took. Naruto raised his head slightly as he spotted his next obstacle, a solid, 10 feet high wooden wall that they assumed he had to climb. Naruto made a small push and jumped far enough for his right hand to latch itself at the top. The examiner's jaw dropped when Naruto lifted himself up with a single arm. Even the censor was surprised by the amount of strength displayed. Raising himself completely from the air, with a single arm and without proper grip was nothing too easy to accomplish. Naruto grinned as he landed on the other side of the wall and proceeded. Time. 3 seconds, Naruto arrived at some vertical ladders but these were made of rope instead of solid wood. Not thinking much about it, Naruto jumped as high as he could and latched himself into the ropes, proceeding to climb up without any difficulties. His coordination was perfect. Time. 6 seconds, as Naruto arrived at the top he spotted long, circular wooden beams, almost as large as tree trunks, leading down into the ground level. Naruto carefully analyzed the round and slippery surface, and any slip-up would mean falling hard into the ground. Having this in his mind, he quickly ran down and arrived at the final obstacle. The final obstacle was nothing but a single rope that Naruto had to climb vertically. Naruto jumped into the rope and began to easily climb it up. He was certainly strong enough to lift his own body weight with a single hand. He arrived at the top and snatched the flag he needed before sliding down the rope and landing on the ground. Time: 7.8 seconds. With the flag in his position, the final piece of this obstacle course was a simple race to the point of origin, without needing to go through the obstacles again. Naruto bent and shot forward, leaving a cloud of dust. Every step he took, the ground would crack from the strength he put behind each step. Naruto didn't stop near the examiner and simply continued running at full speed, until he crossed the examiner. He came to halt, leaving the dust trail behind him as he finished the obstacle course. Cough cough, the examiner waved his hands wildly to clear the dust cloud. Final time: 9.5 seconds. Congratulations Naruto-san, you just moved to the second spot, the examiner said, pointing towards the electronic board, where Naruto's name ranked second in the obstacle course with 9.5 seconds, only surpassed by Rock Lee with 8 seconds. Can't say I'm surprised. The guy is insane with his workout, Naruto thought to himself. Looks like hard work does beat a genius, Naruto chuckled out loud. I don't see the genius, Hinata said with a straight face. Hinata-chan, Naruto whined while Hinata giggled at his antics. Sai simply observed the interaction between the couple, they certainly weren't your usual married couple. Sai, Naruto said, and Sai turned to Naruto, making a shiver run up his spine. Enough with that smile, it's freaking me out. It feels like you are going to kill me in my sleep, Naruto said, and Sai dropped in smile, getting a neutral face. Naruto sighed somewhat and walked to the examiner's side and allowed Sai and Hinata to take their turn. Hinata did her best but had the downside of most of her strength being by chakra enhancement. Still, she managed to easily secure 5th spot with Sai taking the 10th place. Having completed the first exam of the first stage, the examiner led them towards some testing dummies for the taijutsu test. Second part of this exam is to go through the dummies, while performing your taijutsu katas as fast as you can. State your taijutsu style for reference, the examiner said, and Hinata stepped forward this time. Gentle fist taijutsu style, Hinata said, and the examiner happily wrote it down, stepping aside as Hinata stepped forward. She looked around them, counting around 5 dummies who were about to receive a very cruel punishment. Is chakra allowed now? Hinata asked, and the examiner nodded. When you're ready, the examiner said, and clicked on his timer. Hinata disappeared from her position and began running through her katas, she didn't even seem to be touching with dummies. She did her katas with such grace that the proctor almost thought she was dancing. She appeared next to the examiner only a split second later, just in time to see all of the dummies crack at once. They burst into pieces and simply fell to the ground completely destroyed. Nothing bigger than half an arm had remained as the dummies seemed to have been severed in all joints. Amazing, the examiner said while Hinata just smiled at her success. She looked over to the scoreboard and watched as her name appeared in first place. Sai went next, and this time, Naruto's eyes were solely focused on him. Both Naruto and Hinata had read Sai's file, but it didn't say much besides that he had standard skills and used ink-styled jutsus, whatever that was. The only thing Naruto ever used ink for was seals. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the style that Sai had employed, it was ruthless for lack of a better word. Each strike had a purpose behind, there were no feints or anything else. Every strike was either to cripple or kill the opponent. It was a bastardized version of the Anbu style, a far more deadly version. Naruto went next and, although his style wasn't as refined as Hinata's, he still got the job done, finishing in second. Next portion is Genjutsu, the examiner said, and Naruto nodded, his Sharingan blazing to life. Naruto displayed some of the Genjutsu he knew, it wasn't really his thing. Unlike Itachi, Naruto preferred to attack the enemy's body instead of his mind. The only Genjutsu he had actually even bothered to properly train was the Tsukuyomi so that he could awaken the Susanoo. But that didn't stop him from claiming the first spot as well. Just because he didn't like it, it didn't mean he wasn't good at it. Both Hinata and Sai went next, but they managed to score even lower than Naruto. He didn't blame them though. Genjutsu was such an unpopular area that the few that had decent control were already a threat. I mean, look at Itachi. He can defeat an enemy using only Genjutsu, he doesn't even need to move from his place. Last section of this evaluation before the team exercise is ninjutsu, the examiner said. Finally, the good part arrives, Naruto said, rubbing his hands together while the examiner was tempted to take a step back when he saw the crazy glint in his eyes. And it wasn't the Sharingan he had seen. Why yes, the examiner coughed into his hand to suppress his shiver. You need to display a few non-elemental jutsu along with at least 2 natures, the examiner said, and Naruto didn't even give the chance to Hinata or Sai to step forward, he was that excited. What's first? Naruto asked. You decide, the examiner replied, and was surprised when he saw a spinning ball of silver chakra in Naruto's hand. Rasengan, Naruto said, and the examiner nodded, writing something about excellent shape manipulation. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Naruto said, placing his fingers in a T sign. A single clone popped into life. Naruto looked at the examiner and he nodded. Shadow Clone Explosion, the clone that Naruto created suddenly exploded, ripping a chunk of the ground. Very good. What are your chakra natures? The examiner asked. I have all 5 of them, Naruto said, and the examiner stopped writing to look at Naruto. The examiner blinked as Naruto simply nodded. Anyway. Please perform some jutsus for a nature, the examiner said, and watched as Naruto performed a single horse hand seal. Kaiten Goka Mekyaku, Great Fire Annihilation. A barrage of fire was expunged from Naruto's mouth, it scorched the ground, decimating what little had remained from the previous wooden dummies. Why yes, excellent, the examiner replied weakly after witnessing the devastation. It seems fire nature is good. How about some lightning nature, and this time, keep it below S rank, the examiner said, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders but complied anyway. Raiden, Raryuden, Lightning Dragon. Naruto's hands sparkled with blue electricity as a dragon erupted from his palms. The dragon roared before blurring towards Naruto's target and exploded, leaving behind a crater and sparks flying everywhere. Very good, Naruto-san, the examiner said, and Naruto stepped away, looking at the scoreboard where his name had claimed the first spot, and with a very healthy lead above the competition. Hinata went next and claimed the second spot, just a few points behind Naruto. Sai, the examiner called, and Sai stepped forward. Both Naruto and Hinata focused their attention solely on the third members of their team. Sai was an enigma to say the least. He was always throwing around that creepy smile of his, he never engaged in conversation with them. Sai just sat there, watching them unrelentingly like some statue. Root shinobi were supposed to the ultimate soldiers. Trained from birth in the way of the shinobi, reduced to heaps of sweat with their training methods, hardened with blood and pain. They felt no fear, no regret, and no remorse. They were but tools to serve their master in his endeavors. They were prepared to lay down their lives for their master with hesitation whatsoever. Naruto was broken from his thoughts when he heard the proctor ask Sai to display his ninjutsu. Naruto raised an eyebrow as Sai sat on the ground and took a simple scroll, a brush and a bottle of what Naruto figured to be ink. Sai slowly dipped his brush in the black ink and, in the blink of an eye, he had painted a lion on the scroll. Choju Giga Super Beast Scroll. Sai made a single hand seal and the drowned tiger on the scroll rose to life, jumping from it and landing on the ground. The tiger snarled at the proctor, who fell on his butt when he saw the painting come to life. He may be a shinobi, but not even he expected that. Good, the examiner said as he rose to his feet. He searched for the tiger and found him eating the wooden dummies who were mangled by the tiger's vicious jaws. Sumi Bunshin no Jutsu, ink clone. Sai said, and the tiger dispelled into a puddle of ink on the ground. The ink suddenly started moving, clustering together into a large pool. The ink pool started raising from the ground and taking the shape of Sai. Interesting, the proctor murmured to himself as he scribbled down on his board. So that's his ink jutsu, both Hinata and Naruto thought at Sai's performance. His style surely was very dynamic and versatile, but his creations seemed somewhat fragile. Before we proceed to the team exercise, do you wish to be tested in anything else for extra points? The examiner asked, and everyone shook their heads in denial. Well, actually I do have another category I would like to be evaluated, Naruto suddenly said, stopping the protector in his tracks. which is Bojutsu, staff arts. Naruto said, and Hinata was surprised that he would bring that up of everything else. She wondered why he didn't want to be tested in Fuinjutsu, but maybe he had forgotten. The examiner hummed in thought as he thought of someone who could give Naruto what he wanted. Kumo shinobi were primarily skilled in kenjutsu since a blade was sharper and more effective than a staff. A sword can cut while the staff doesn't. This statement would be true for a normal staff and certainly not the one that Naruto had in his possession. I will be right back, the proctor said and simply left without any explanation, leaving Naruto's team to wonder what happened. A few minutes later the proctor returned with another shinobi by his side. He was a young, dark-skinned shinobi with short, spiky, white hair and dark eyes accentuated with lines curving upwards from the corners. He wore a dark outfit consisting of an overlong shirt with a hood, with red bandage hand guards, kumogakur shin guards, and a black forehead protector. He carried a long sword on his back and had a lollipop on his mouth. Naruto? The shinobi asked in surprise. Omoi, long time no see, Naruto said greeting the fellow shinobi. You know each other? The examiner asked and both shinobi nodded. We both participated in the Chunin exams 3 years ago, Omoi said while Naruto nodded. I see, the proctor replied. Omoi is here to test you in Bojutsu. Since we have no foremost expert in this area, you will be sparring against Omoi's kenjutsu, the examiner explained. If you aren't an expert, how can you evaluate my skills? Naruto asked curious. I may not be an expert in weapons, but I know enough to understand when someone is skilled or not. Besides, Omoi is one of the swordsmen in Kumo. Judging from your battle with him, I can easily evaluate your skill level, the proctor explained and Naruto nodded. The space around Naruto started swirling and not much longer he had a staff on his right hand. Naruto twirled the staff in his hand, slamming it on the ground, creating a small shock wave from the strength behind it. Omoi raised an eyebrow when he felt the earth vibrate slowly as Naruto slammed his staff on the ground. This is purely a weapons demonstration, no crippling or killing strikes, understood? The examiner asked and both participants nodded. Omoi took his sword and gripped it tightly with both hands. Naruto picked his staff, raising his right arm above his head and lowering his left. He hadn't used a staff since he had mastered the art, and that was nearly 8 years ago. Hajime, the proctor said, and both shinobi dashed forward, both weapons meeting with a loud clang. Small orange sparks were released as the sword's sharp edge grazed against Naruto's metal staff as both shinobi struggled. Being stronger, Naruto was able to push Omoi backwards. Naruto quickly withdrew his staff, spinning it behind his back and striking towards Omoi once again. Omoi parried Naruto's flurry of attacks as he could, but even him was starting to be overpowered. The amounts of attacks and the fluidity at which they came was unreal. Naruto wasn't as rusty as he thought himself to be. Omoi stumbled backwards but managed to regain his footing. He looked up just in time to see Naruto in the air. Omoi jumped to the side as Naruto slammed the tip of his staff on the ground, breaking the earth and embedding the staff on it. Using the staff as support, Naruto swirled around it and slammed his foot into Omoi's chest, sending him tumbling through the ground. Naruto dug the staff of the ground and waited for Omoi to stand. Both shinobi dashed forward and their weapons met once again. Kumo Ryu Mikazukigiri Cloud Style, Crescent Moon Slice. Omoi said as he swung his blade in a single, large, crescent moon-shaped arc. Naruto tilted backwards and caught the trail of chakra left by the blade. Naruto jumped backwards and flexed his staff forward. The staff suddenly expanded, growing exponentially in size. Omoi never expected the range of Naruto's staff to suddenly increase this rapidly and was unable to dodge. Omoi was struck in his right shoulder, hard enough to send him spinning through the air and landing rather hard on the ground. Omoi rose from the ground, breathing hard and clutching to his shoulder in pain. From his face, Naruto could easily tell that he was unprepared for that attack and that his shoulder was most likely dislodged. That is enough, the examiner quickly yelled when he saw the devastating strike Omoi had received. Maybe I got carried away, Naruto chuckled weakly while Hinata just shook her head. Report to the hospital, the proctor said towards Omoi. I can fix him, Hinata said and approached Omoi. Let me see, Hinata said and her hands glowed green as she analyzed the extent of the damage. Your shoulder is dislocated. This might hurt, Hinata warned while Omoi just groaned. On 3, Hinata warned and Omoi nodded. 1, Hinata said and suddenly pushed his shoulder backwards. Omoi gave a yell of pain when he heard his bones snap to place. It was over just as it had begun. I thought you said on 3. Omoi gritted his teeth but sighed in relief as Hinata's hands glowed green once more and his pain diminished. Expecting pain only increases it, Hinata simply replied smiling sweetly. Damn medics, Omoi groaned in thought. Sorry about that, Naruto said but Omoi waved him off. Congratulations Naruto-san. You took second place, the proctor said and Naruto raised an eyebrow as his attention was shifted to the first name on the scoreboard. First place. Sarutobi Hiruzen. I didn't know the old man took the Junin exams, Naruto said with surprise in his voice. These exams really are ancient. Sandame-sama isn't that old Naruto-kun, Hinata chided while Naruto just chuckled. Anything else before the team exercise? The proctor asked and this time was met with complete silence. He waited a few seconds but no one changed their minds. The last exercise of the first stage is the team exercise, the proctor said and lead the team into the nearby forest. It was a small forest, but a very dense one. It was obviously prepared for this exam. Now, the proctor started gathering the attention. The purpose of this exercise is to retrieve a scroll which is located in a small wooden cabin deep within the woods. Along the way there will several traps. Deadly ones I might add, the proctor warned and everyone nodded. Once you have the scroll you will make your way back here. As always, the quicker you do it, the more points you will get awarded. Understood. The proctor asked and everyone nodded. Do all team members have to participate? Naruto asked curious. Of course. It's a team exercise after all, the proctor replied confused while Naruto smirked. When you are ready, the proctor said and watched as Naruto's team stood at the edge of the forest. This is what we will do, Naruto said and gathered both Hinata and Sai. You will both stand guard here while I go get the scroll, Naruto said and both members blinked at him. I'm sorry. Hinata asked, thinking she might have misheard him. You heard what the proctor said. All team members must participate, however he didn't specify which role, Naruto replied while Hinata just shook her head. She already knew what he was going to do. Fine, Hinata replied and Sai simply went with the flow. Go, the proctor yelled and the three members dashed forward. As they arrived near the first set of trees, both Hinata and Sai stopped running and took cover behind them. Naruto kept running, his Sharingan taking every detail of the surrounding environment. His ears heard whizzing sounds and he turned his head to the side. Dozens of kune were flying towards him at high speeds. Naruto smiled and kept running forward. His eyes started glowing and his Kamui was activated. What the proctor asked in shock as he watched Naruto keep running and the kune simply pass through him. Once the kune were over his Kamui was disabled and Naruto kept on running. It was a straightforward exercise whose point was obviously trap detection. Naruto lifted his head and saw the small wooden cabin just a few yards away. He smiled and kept on running until he heard a sizzling noise. He looked down and saw the path was riddled with explosive tags. Naruto chuckled and used his Kamui and kept going forward. Explosions rocked the grounds and large clouds of smoke rose into the sky. The proctor cringed when he saw Naruto being consumed by the explosions, but was again surprised when he saw him running out of smoke cloud, completely unharmed. Naruto's eyes caught a ceiling tag at the cabin's door. It was another trap with an explosive tag but this one it needed to be disarmed, otherwise it would blow up the cabin, scroll included. Naruto smirked and simply right through the door using his Kamui. I'm done here, the proctor conceded and threw his board at the ground. He gave up on trying to understand Senju Naruto. Naruto saw the scroll on a small table and simply took it. He flashed towards Hinata and all three members rushed out of the forest. Time. 42 seconds, the proctor said shaking his head. He pointed towards the display and saw Naruto's team ranking first with the second nowhere near. The second best time was nearly 5 minutes. Are we done? Naruto asked and the proctor nodded. Yes. Meet here at 8 for the announcement of which teams will proceed to the second stage, the proctor said and watched the team leave. They had broken or achieved first place in every single category barring the obstacle course but he didn't blame them. When he himself saw some green creature shouting something about flames of youth he even considered retirement at 30 years old. Later that evening, everyone had gathered to find out the teams that would proceed. They met up with Lee, Tenten and Shikamaru, who seemed to also be waiting for the results. How did it go? Hinata asked. Although clearly not as good as you, Tenten replied, pointing to the scoreboards. Lee managed to score enough points in the taijutsu and obstacle course to be able to proceed. You know Shika, he played his cards and ended up right in the middle of the competition, Tenten said, and Hinata chuckled. At least we all get to go to the second stage, Naruto said, and everyone nodded. Oh well. See you all tomorrow for the next exam, #Omegakure, Payne's Tower #, are you sure this is wise? Conan asked towards the only person in the room. Her voice was neutral and perfectly calm, betraying none of her worrying thoughts. In the back of the room, concealed by the shadows, stood a person with a single visible eye. The person was a fair-skinned man with chin-length red hair, with his most noticeable trait being his single rinnegan. He didn't look healthy, as he seemed to be severely malnourished, with his ribcage and bone structure openly visible. He had chakra receivers implanted into his back, one in each of his shoulder joints, smaller ones in his forearms, and two metal-like screw under his collar bones, near his shoulder joint. The person sat on some machine that appeared to be some type of mechanical walker. It's a dangerous game you are playing, Nagato, Conan warned, but Nagato seemed determined on his course of action. It needs to be done, Nagato simply said. Conan was about to reply when a familiar swirling sound came into the room. From the vortex, Tobi, or Fugaku, walked into the small rays of light coming through the cracks in the room. What are you doing here? Conan asked, her voice back to its neutral tone and her eyes narrowing in slight apprehension. Although she seemed mostly calm on the outside, she was prepared should Tobi try anything foolish. Suit up, Tobi said, throwing Nagato something whitish in color. Nagato picked up what Tobi had thrown and his eyes widened when he realized what it was. This is, Nagato replied, but was interrupted by Tobi. I need you at full strength for this. Chapter 55. Just my luck. Why do these things always happen to us? Naruto wondered out loud. He released a long sigh as he looked at the dark sky. It was full moon and its light shone across the vast forest. The leaves rustled with the night's cold air and Naruto sighed again. He looked towards Hinata, who also seemed to be deep in thought, looking at Sai as if to solve a puzzle. Naruto shifted his eyes towards the last member of his team, one root shinobi by the name of Sai. Sai was the reason of Naruto's troubles, as he was currently on his knees on the ground. His pupils were dilated and his face neutral. He seemed to be staring into nothingness. What am I going to do with you? Naruto asked rhetorically, nursing his temples and shaking his head. Earlier that day Naruto-kun, Hinata said in a low voice, trying to hide her blushing face. Everyone is staring, she said, lowering her head and avoiding gazing upon the crowd. She hid her face between her long hair as she looked subtlety around. Naruto just chuckled and held her tightly by her thighs. Hinata was currently sitting on Naruto's shoulders as they made their way towards the second stage of the exams. The sight of two very strong and popular shinobi walking around a different village was enough to bring attention to them, but their current position only increased it. They are just jealous, Hinata-chan, Naruto replied, tilting his head up to look at Hinata's red face, and chuckled. Hinata glared at him, well, as much as she can glare in the end. It's not funny, Hinata pouted, seeing that her fierce glare got her nowhere. You know that I, unlike you, don't like being the center of attention, much less with foreign people, Hinata mumbled. I don't like being the center of attention, Naruto replied. Please, Hinata snorted playfully, you and me both know that you enjoy the spotlight, maybe a little, Naruto said, and Hinata smiled but got thinking. Although, Hinata started in a suspicious voice, narrowing her eyes. You have been unusually affectionate today. Not that I'm complaining, but what brought this on? Hinata asked, curious. Nothing in particular, Naruto replied, shrugging his shoulders. Just a talk I had with Kurama earlier today. Flashback, everything was quiet in the room. The sun was beginning to rise in the horizon and the darkness in the room started dissipating with the sun shining through the windows. Naruto stirred as the room became brighter and groggily opened his eyes. He shifted in the bed until his eyes landed on Hinata's sleeping form. Naruto smiled at her peaceful face and slowly turned so that he could observe her more comfortably. He brought his hand to her cheek and brushed her hair away. She's so pretty, Naruto thought to himself, gently running his fingers over her rosy cheek. Hinata seemed to feel his touch and leaned in for closer contact. Naruto smiled at her actions even though she was still asleep. Cherish every moment with her. Naruto heard and turned his attention to the end of the bed where Kurama was curled in a small ball, with all of his tails. I already do that, Naruto replied and Kurama opened a single eye. But what makes you say that? Naruto asked curious. Kurama had never given him much advice or even mingled much in his relationship with Hinata. Just a piece of advice, Kurama said yawning and displaying his teeth. You have no idea what it's like facing eternity alone, Kurama said and Naruto raised an eyebrow at the bitterness in his voice. You have 8 siblings, Naruto said confused by the topic. You know nothing Naruto, Kurama snorted. I know everything about your story, Naruto began and Kurama's eye twitched at his naivety. I know that Hagoromo created you and your siblings from the Jubi. Naruto would have kept talking if it wasn't from Kurama's roar. Shhhs, keep it down, Naruto whispered as he looked towards Hinata who remained sleeping. How long ago do you think all of this happened? Kurama asked. A couple centuries. Naruto wondered and Kurama chuckled at his answer. It has been almost 19,000 years since I was born, Kurama replied and Naruto was surprised. There had been ninja for a while apparently. Sure it was fun when we were all together growing up. The first few centuries I was actually happy when we were all together. But then you came, Kurama retorted angrily, raising in the bed with all of his tails. You shinobi and your endless lust for power, Kurama barked and Naruto was surprised by the amount of hate coming from his voice. You drove us apart, forced us to split so that we weren't caught and enslaved like we are now. You forced each one of us to take their own path and to survive in loneliness for fear of our own survival. You have no idea what's like living for millenniums all alone. Walking this earth without nothing to look for, always on watch for your people. You never knew how many times I thought about death knowing very well that I would never get it, Kurama sighed and lied back down. I don't know why that snake seeks it so vehemently, eternity is nothing but a curse in the end. You will eventually tire just like I did, but I for one will never die or perish. I will linger and live on even after your kind disappears from this earth, Kurama said and Naruto never thought about things like this. Well, you got me, Naruto said grinning while Kurama just shook his head. I'm old Naruto, very old, Kurama began, as I told you, I am around 19,000 years old. I watched times of peace and prosperity, and times of war. I watched as kingdoms fell and new ones rose to take their place. I watched as man ventured himself across the ocean, deep into the mountains and high into the sky. But above all, I watched as humans began nurturing their energies and began using them. It took time for my father's teachings to spread across the globe. I watched as humanity lived peacefully with the help of chakra but then they realized its full potential. The potential for war. Mankind was created with a hole in their hearts. A hole that no possession, power, or knowledge could fill. And in their infinite greed, man dreamed of expanding his dominion over the entire earth. That is how the first chakra wars began that led into the clan wars finally culminating into what we know today. You said I had you, Kurama chuckled bitterly. You will perish to time while I will live on. I'll endure the fall of man and the rise of the next species. I will linger on in darkness and in doubt as nightfall in winter that comes without a star. I will dwell, bound to loneliness under the fading trees until all the world is changed and its long years of life are utterly spent. Maybe then, I can rest in peace, Kurama finished and Naruto was simply staring at him. You should focus on the present and like you said, cherish every moment. Instead of sulking about the past and future you should enjoy the present. No matter how short it may seem to you, Naruto replied and Kurama snorted at his speech. And maybe I'll find a way to keep you company through the ages, Naruto grinned while Kurama just chuckled. I'll hold you to that, Kurama said before walking out and leaving behind a thoughtful Naruto. End flashback, what mess did I get myself into now? Naruto thought to himself as he, Hinata and Sai made their way towards the second stage of the Junin exams. Naruto wondered what would be like living forever, watching as everyone else perished and he remained behind, untouched by time, immune to diseases. Being forced to adapt as the world changed around him. Choosing sides when Konoha was no longer standing. Naruto may be a lot of things but he wasn't naive, he knew that the shinobi would come to an end eventually. Naruto could only wonder what would follow. Would the knowledge to form chakra simply fade away to give way to the singular energies? Would mankind simply forget about chakra and live on as regular civilians, leaving behind the shinobi way? Naruto had a lot to think about if he wanted to keep Kurama's promise. Although he knew one thing for certain. If he was going to fulfill his promise of keeping company to Kurama through the ages, then he would find a way to have Hinata by his side. Second stage location Naruto's team arrived at the location of the second stage of the Junin exams. He looked around and the place seemed a little deserted, too deserted for his own taste. Naruto noticed that his team was the only one there. He looked up to the sun to check the time and rechecked the paper he was given. They were certainly in the right spot. They were in a deserted plain with nothing but a mountain in front of them and an abyss on the other side. Naruto's curiosity got the best of him and he went towards the abyss and looked down. They were a few hundred feet above the Raikage Tower. Welcome, Naruto heard and turned around to see some Chunin running towards them. You are exactly on time. If you follow me to the edge of the mountain I will explain the next stage, the Chunin said, and Naruto, Hinata and Sai silently followed him to a small wooden shack at the bottom of the mountain. Naruto curiously looked up but couldn't see the edge of it, the cloud bank blocked his view of the top. Now the next stage is rather simple. This is what we call the Crystal Peak Mountain. On top of this mountain are 20 flags. Each team can only take one. Your objective is to go up or around the mountain and make your way to the Forbidden Forest on the other side. The Chunin explained and everyone listened carefully. In order to pass this stage you will need to collect at least 2 flags and find the tower hidden in the forest. You have a time limit of 5 days. Questions? The Chunin asked. You said we need 2 flags, Hinata said and the Chunin nodded. We can take only one from the top which means the other will have to be removed from other teams, correct? Hinata asked. Yes, the Chunin began. You can either climb to the top and immediately secure a flag for yourselves and take the other, or you can simply find your way around the mountain and take 2 flags from another teams. The choice is yours, the Chunin explained and Hinata nodded. Engagement rules. Sai asked. Every team for themselves. The only requisite is that the whole team is alive when you reach the tower, with 2 flags of course, the Chunin said and Sai gave him his creepy smile. Alright, the Chunin said clearing his throat. Anything else? He asked but all of them shook their heads. Very well. Each team was given a random spot on the bottom of the mountain. The test will begin momentarily, the Chunin said and stepped aside. What should we do? Hinata asked towards his teammates. This is the highest mountain in the world. With an altitude of around 10,000 meters, 32,000 feet. To normal civilians it would take weeks of training and more weeks to actually reach the top, Naruto mused. Even if we are shinobi, climbing the mountain without making sure everyone knows the dangers would be foolish, Naruto explained. But if we climb to the top we can secure ourselves a flag, Sai said. Taking into account that no one has reached it before, Hinata added and Naruto nodded. I guess we will make a run to the top. The edges of the mountain are extremely slippery so use caution with your chakra. The temperature will drop severely as we go up. Everyone knows the thermal coat jutsu, right? Naruto asked and got nods from both Hinata and Sai. 1. As we go up, oxygen concentration will start to decrease so coat your lungs with chakra to compensate and finally be very careful for random bursts of wind that can detach you from the mountain and send you to your deaths. Everyone understand? Naruto asked and got nods once again. Good. Let's go then, Naruto said as his team positioned themselves at the bottom of the mountain, waiting for the go signal from the Chunin. Hajime, the Chunin yelled as a loud bell echoed through the air. Naruto and his team immediately jumped onto the mountain side, channeling chakra to their feet and sticking to it. They shot upwards at high speeds, intending to secure a flag to themselves. Meanwhile Konoha Tsunade sighed as she took a sip from her sake. She shook her shoulders, trying to get rid of her stiffness as she picked up another report. She started reading when her eyes widened. Autopsy report performed by Takashi Taro, assistant, Rin Takara. Date: June 13 of the 93 Shinobi Year. Time: 4:30 p.m. Summary report. Name: Hyuga Hiyashi. Coroner's case: 2014542. Date of birth: January 8. Age: 44. Gender: male. Bloodline: Byakugan. Evidence of treatment: N.A. External examination. The autopsy is begun at 4:30 p.m. on June 13 of the 93 Shinobi Year. The subject is wearing gray pants and shirt consistent with the traditional garb of a Konoha prisoner. The clothes are on good conditions given that the subject incarceration was recent. The body is that of a developed 44-year-old man, measuring 176 centimeters, 70 inches, and weighing 66 kilograms, 145 pounds. The body shows scar tissue and many other wounds that never properly healed, which is consistent with the subject's medical file. Medically amputated right arm. Internal examination. Skeletal system. The subject displayed numerous broken bones all over the body with particular focus on arms, legs and ribs. The ribs 7 to 12 show multiple fractures. Cardiovascular system. The heart weighs 300 grams and possess normal size and configuration. Upon further analysis, a small blockage was found in the coronary arteries. This prevented proper blood flow unto the heart, preventing the heart muscle from receiving oxygenated blood. Opinion. Normally a block of this size should not be deadly for the body of a professional shinobi. I infer that the lack of proper nutrition and general living conditions of the prisoner may have led to furthering this problem. Cause of death. Acute myocardial infarction state. Body destroyed according to protocol. Unbelievable, Tsunade muttered, reading the report 3 times to make sure she missed nothing. Shinobi with active chakra networks don't get sick unless it's a really deadly disease. It's one of the perks of being shinobi, Tsunade mused in thought. And even though he was a clan head with very few missions, he should still be in shape. She couldn't grasp how could have this occurred. She could only do one thing. She took a deep breath and shouted across the Hokage tower. Shizuuuneee. Back with Naruto. 2 hours had passed since Naruto's team ventured themselves into the high mountain. Their climb had been rather dull since they didn't come across any other team. The starting points at the foot of the mountain were random and separate for each team, so it wasn't completely out of the ordinary. They had just passed the halfway mark and they could already feel the shortage of breath due to the lack of oxygen, not to mention the freezing temperatures didn't exactly help. In the end they were shinobi, the strongest warriors available in the world. Even to a decently trained shinobi these conditions were nothing but bothersome. While they would delay them, they surely wouldn't hinder them. Naruto had begun using his thermal coat to keep his body temperature at acceptable levels. He scanned his surroundings and saw nothing but snow all around them. He turned towards Sai, who also had his thermal coat on. His attention shifted towards Hinata, who was running in the middle of the group with her Byakugan activated. That was when Naruto felt it. Hinata-chan, Naruto called, but Hinata didn't turn her head. She didn't need it with her Byakugan on, she just gave a small nod of acknowledgement. I can see that you don't have your thermal coat. Aren't you cold? Naruto asked, curious. Not really. It's feel nice actually, Hinata replied, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. Really? Naruto thought curiously. Nearly negative 30 degrees and she says it's nice, Naruto thought, shaking his head in amusement. Boommm Naruto. Hinata and Sai immediately halted their progress when they heard a loud explosion ring through the air. They tried to pinpoint the location of the sound and shifted their attention towards the left, which they could see a large column of smoke rising. Looks like we are not alone in this, Hinata said as she stretched her Byakugan range towards the smoke. One team down, Hinata said as she watched one team racing down the mountains with an avalanche on their trail. It was quite amusing actually. She knew that they wouldn't die with a simple avalanche, but watching them stumble down the mountain is far too amusing to pass. Do you have eyes on Shika's team? Naruto asked, and Hinata refocused her Byakugan, increasing her range and scanning the whole mountain for their friends. They are climbing the mountain as well, Hinata replied. They are on the other side and just past the 4-mile mark. We are the closest team to the peak, Hinata said and chuckled, getting a curious look from Naruto. Just our luck, we got the steepest path on this mountain, Hinata said, and Naruto chuckled as well. Sai remained there, feeling almost like a third wheel, with the exception he felt nothing of sorts. Couple hours later. Welcome to the top of Crystal Peak. Some Kumo shinobi greeted Naruto's team as they arrived at the top. Looks like we are the first to arrive, Naruto said, and the shinobi nodded. Man, what a view, Naruto said, looking around and could see nothing but pure white around. The mountain has so high that they stood above the cloud bank. It looked like a blanket of pure white with the sun shining in the blue sky. I almost feel tempted to jump on the clouds. Naruto laughed and Hinata just shook her head. I wouldn't remount that. It's a long way down. The Kumo shinobi smirked. Here is your flag, the shinobi said, handing a small black flag to Naruto. Good luck on the rest of the stage, the shinobi said and everyone nodded. At least it will be faster on the way down, Hinata said as she and her team jumped and started running downwards towards the forest. I have a suggestion, Sai said, breaking their conversation and getting their attention. Choju Giga Super Beast Scroll. Sai said and drawing something in his scroll. With a loud screech, 3 black and white birds shot from the scroll. They flapped their wings creating a small gust of wind and rose into the air. It will be faster, Sai said, jumping on top of one bird while he waited for Naruto and Hinata to join. Sounds good, Naruto said, jumping on top of one while Hinata took the last one. With a loud screech the birds plummeted downwards in blinding speeds. How come you didn't offer this when we were climbing? Naruto asked, placing a hand in front of his eyes to shield the wind. Didn't remember, Sai simply said and Naruto sweat dropped and focused on controlling the bird. The Forbidden Forest So this is the famous Forbidden Forest of Kumo, Naruto said as he and his team arrived at the entrance of the forest. I'm impressed, Naruto said crossing his arms as he scanned the forest in front of him. He did admit that the forest did have a certain ominous feeling to it. The forest itself seemed shrouded in darkness and a cold breeze swept by. Naruto's team ventured themselves into the forest and watched in fascination as the entrance seemed to close itself behind them, as if trapping them in the forest forever. Genjutsu, Hinata whispered loud enough to her team to hear. They both nodded in agreement, feeling the subtle change in their chakra networks. An enemy team? Sai asked, placing a hand on the hilt of his tanto. He scanned his surroundings very carefully, trying to ascertain any danger. No, Hinata replied with her Byakugan activated. It seems it's been here for a while, Hinata explained. Probably one of many traps placed here just for this stage, Naruto offered and both agreed as they moved forward. The forest seemed taken from a horror movie. The forest was thick with trees so high that it dwarfed them, light barely seemed to penetrate the cloak of leaves at the top. On the ground some type of black flowers while every other dead, their leaves withering away. Impassable terrain blocked with rocks and thorns that seemed a natural occurrence. A sound rang through the forest, a small owl hooting. This is really one creepy place, Naruto shivered. Scared? Hinata teased. Oh sure, Naruto replied sarcastically, this coming from the one who launched a full water dragon inside our bedroom to kill a spider, Naruto said deadpanned while Hinata huffed. They are mean little buggers. Besides it worked didn't it? Hinata asked while Naruto just shook his head. Suddenly Naruto turned and flung a kunai to his left. The kunai sailed through the air at blinding speeds, one could almost hear the whistle. Thump. Naruto looked around and noticed his target. A beast, 8-eyed, 8-legged, jet black, hairy. A gigantic black spider, with legs measuring up to 10 feet, poisonous green liquid dripping from its fangs and a kunai embedded deeply in its skull, between its multiple black, pupilless eyes. Scared? Naruto teased while Hinata just smiled and shook her head in defeat. What did I tell you? Naruto asked, turning back to Hinata and pointing towards the animal. This place is creepy, he said, and Hinata just shook her head. Can you locate the tower? Sai asked and Hinata nodded, sitting down and crossing her legs. Her chakra flared and the veins of her face bulged out. She focused and extended her Byakugan range. She saw past the tree, past the blockade of thorns and rock, past the river that split the forest and reached the outer edge of the forest. There are hundreds of those things here, Hinata said in a gasp. She watched with her Byakugan as a pack of nearly 10 of those spiders dismembered other animals. And just as many snakes of equal size. Great, Naruto replied in a sarcastic voice. You could burn it down, Kurama offered while Naruto chucked at his opinion. I could, but I doubt that the Raikage would be pleased, Naruto replied. Found it, Hinata said, breaking Naruto from his conversation. The tower is about 10 miles southeast. I also spotted a couple of teams around, setting up traps and ambushes. 2 teams have flags on them, Hinata explained. Which team with flag is closer to the tower? Naruto asked and Hinata extended her arm, pointing in some direction. Lead on, Naruto said and Hinata jumped forwards. Not even half an hour later Hinata motioned and everyone halted their progress. Naruto activated his Sharingan and could see 3 chakra signatures half-mile away. What's the plan? Sai asked as he observed the enemy Kumo team from the trees. Spring the trap, Naruto smirked and brought his hands in a T shape. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. 3 clones appeared next to the original Naruto. 2 of them were enveloped in smoke to reveal a Sai and a Hinata. Without a word being said, the clone team jumped forward as if not noticing the traps. Enemy shinobi, one of the Kumo shinobi yelled and his team sprang into action. Shit, it's the team from Konoha, the Kumo shinobi yelled as they took out kunai and flung them. Hinata reared her right arm and pushed it forward, releasing a pressurized ball of wind that simply swept the kunai away. Raiden. Sandabaruto Thunderbolt. The hands of one of the Kumo shinobi started sparkling as they were enveloped in a blue aura. As he shouted the name, dozens of sparks were unleashed upon Naruto and his team. Naruto picked up his fan and released a gust of wind, dispelling the Kumo's lightning attack. Damn, the Kumo shinobi muttered. The Kumo team picked their swords and rushed forward to meet Naruto, Hinata and Sai head-on. As they closed their distance and the clash seemed unavoidable, Naruto smirked and the clones dispelled, leaving behind a cloud of white smoke. Where are they? One member asked to another. I don't. The shinobi didn't manage to reply as he fell to the ground with a thump sound. What hap? His other teammate also fell to the ground and the last member was left all alone against 3 shinobi of Konoha. He didn't get much time to think as he felt a small pinch in the back of his neck and everything went black. Once the smoke had cleared the original Naruto, Hinata and Sai jumped into the clearing. Nice job, Naruto said and Hinata thanked him, pocketing her favorite Senbon. There were 3 missing Senbon from her stash, those 3 were presently attached to the neck of the Kumo shinobi, 1 Senbon for each. Here is the flag, Naruto said, picking up the flag, making their count 2. Hinata-chan finds us a good place to rest and we will continue on tomorrow, Naruto said and Hinata nodded, using her Byakugan to scan the nearby area. Clang. Naruto heard a small metal noise and turned just in time to see Sai unsheath his tanto. He wondered what he was doing with his sword out and his eyes widened when Sai approached the Kumo team and raised his arm. Smack, it was just a blur to Sai eyes. In a moment he was about to end the Kumo team and in the other his hand was in a vice grip at the hands of Naruto. What do you think you are doing? Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes at his teammate. Finishing the enemy team, Sai simply replied, his hand still gripping his tanto. Why do you want to kill them? Naruto asked. They are unconscious and we have their flag. Kumo is not allied with Konoha. The exams gives free reign upon the battles and thus no backslash. They are enemy shinobi who one day may pose a threat to Konoha, Sai simply replied, looking intently in Naruto's eyes. This is just a competition, there is no need for blood. Lower your weapon, Naruto said. I shall make it clean, Sai countered and Naruto resisted the urge to face palm himself. There is no need for deaths, Naruto said in a serious tone but Sai seemed unrelenting. It is best to kill the weed before it grows, Sai said. I'm the team captain. Lower your weapon, that is an order, Naruto ordered and Sai nodded. Yes sir, Sai said, slowly lowering his arm and sheathing the tanto, his face emotionless, giving nothing away. Naruto released the grip on his arm and went to join Hinata. Damn root shinobi and their emotional conditioning, Naruto thought as he released a long sigh and turned to his teammate. Come Sai. Let us make camp and rest for the night, Naruto said. Middle of the night the night came quickly and darkness enveloped the forest. The trees already made the forest dark during the day but at night, there was nothing but pitch black darkness. Sai looked up at the ceiling of trees to see a few rays of moonlight break the cover and provide some much needed vision. Sai shifted his attention to his surroundings. At the bottom of the tree both Naruto and Hinata laid asleep while Sai kept guard. He looked towards the edge of the small clearing and spotted the ninja wire glistening under the moon. A few feet away, explosive tags attached with wire as well. Sai got up and silently opened his pack. From it, he retrieved a single scroll which contained the information of his mission, given to him personally by Danzo. He slowly unwrapped the scroll to get the mission description but was surprised by the lack of it. When he read what the mission entailed, his eyes widened and his mouth opened in shock but no sound came out. Dispose of Senju Naruto and Senju Hinata. Flashback. The place looked like a pit. Sai looked around to see multiple wooden bridges. One above another. Sai walked to the edge and looked down only to find darkness at the bottom. Suddenly he heard footsteps and noticed Shimura Danzo approaching him, flanked by two shinobi, one on each side. Sai immediately got onto his knees. Danzo-sama, Sai said, bowing his head in greeting of his master. Welcome Sai, Danzo said, and Sai slowly raised his head. It was customary to never meet the eyes of their master unless addressed first. I have a very important mission for you, Danzo replied, and Sai nodded. His face, although seemingly emotionless and natural, portrayed determination and attention. Tomorrow you will be called to Hokage's office where you will receive your mission, which will last nearly 1 month. You will be the third member of one of Konoha's teams that Lady Tsunade will be sending to the Junin exams in Kumo. Understand so far? Danzo asked, and Sai nodded. The exam will have the same structure as the Chunin exams. The first stage will be some sort of basic skills evaluation, the second stage will be a survival exercise, and the last stage will be the tournament. Danzo explained and handed Sai a single scroll. Your mission is specified on that scroll, which you are only to open during the second stage of the exams, preferably when you are alone. Understood? Danzo asked. It shall be done, Danzo-sama, Sai replied, pocketing the scroll. I'm sure I don't need to explain the importance of every mission I give, correct? Danzo asked, taking a deep breath and looking firmly at Sai. En route, you have no name. You have no feelings. You have no past. You have no future. There is only the mission, Sai recited, and Danzo nodded at his apprentice. You are dismissed, Danzo ordered, and Sai bowed his head once again before walking away and disappearing in the darkness of the tunnels. Permission to speak freely. Danzo shifted his attention towards his right. The shinobi to his right wore a short, black jacket with red straps on the shoulders. He also wore a red short kimono under the jacket with a black sash, a pair of black gloves, dark-colored pants, and regular shinobi sandals. Granted, Fu, Danzo replied and focused on what the shinobi had to say. Do you think Sai will be able to accomplish the mission? Fu asked while Danzo hummed. Naruto has grown strong, far too strong to be controlled. That is the problem with strong shinobi and the reason why most defect from their villages. Young Naruto may not believe it, but power and fear are the absolutes of this world. And when some shinobi reach power beyond their leaders, then it gets very complicated. What do you think Naruto would do? Should Lady Tsunade ever issue an order that would oppose his beliefs? Do you think he would abide by her orders if they conflicted with his own gains? Danzo asked, but Fu remained silent. Shinobi are nothing but weapons, and I do not wish for one that will not obey me, Danzo explained. And about Lady Hinata? The shinobi to Danzo left asked. He was a fairly tall and lean-built man. He had fair skin and short spiked dull black hair. His glasses were built into the mask, obscuring his eyes, and he was also heavily clothed. He wore a short black jacket with red straps over the shoulders, and a high-collared, all-black outfit with a red sash around his waist and what appeared to be an apron over his pants. Yes, Torun, Senju Hinata, formerly known as Hyuga Hinata, disowned daughter of the former clan head, Hyuga Hiyashi, Danzo chuckled slowly. Naruto did a remarkable job with her. She may seem shy, serene, kind and very fragile, but she's just as much of a princess as I am, Danzo replied in a thoughtful manner. While she doesn't possess the raw power and strength that Naruto does, she is just as deadly. You saw what she did to Hiyashi, her own father and one of Konoha's strongest. In fact, in some points, I do believe the girl to be more dangerous than the boy himself. Naruto is loud and brash, Senju attributes, and in the end I should be glad that he didn't inherit the Uchiha's ones. The girl on the other hand. Danzo mused. She is smart, objective and decisive. Necessary traits for medics after all, Danzo explained. She wouldn't just jump into war like him. If I know her as well as I think I do, she would stick to the shadows and wait for the best moment to strike, like a true shinobi. Her beauty alone would get her anywhere she wished, and with her talents and my training, she would be a Hokage to remember, Danzo said wishfully. I do not fear the one who jumps into the battle without thought, I fear those who hide in the shadows, the man behind the man behind the man. And she just strikes me as a person who would be the mastermind, hiding in the shadows and working with peons. But alas, she shares the same philosophy of her husband, Danzo finished and sighed in defeat. She would have been a great en route. If both of them are all that, what makes you certain that Sai will accomplish the mission? Fu asked and Danzo chuckled darkly. Even a cage falls to a kunai. End flashback, I have my orders, Sai thought as he saw the scroll in front of him disintegrate into speckles of dirt. He looked towards Naruto and Hinata who were sleeping near the tree. And with the stealth training he had, he put his plan into motion. He slowly and quietly as the knight, started unpacking the necessary items for his mission. He took out and unsheathed his tanto, laying it on the ground. From his pack he took a single vial which had some skull etched on the label, some kind of poison. And finally, a single strand of some kind of wire, transparent and almost invisible to the naked eye. The girl would die from the poison. Even if she was a first-class medic on par or better than Tsunade herself, she would die in her sleep. Sai picked the wire and poison, and jumped into the tree, standing right above her. He took out the wire and held it right above her mouth. Sai took the poison and dropped a single drop in the wire. Sai watched in anticipation as the purple drop slowly made its way down the wire. Once it reached it simply fell from the wire and directly into the lips of Senju Hinata. Hinata seemed to have felt something on her mouth as she licked her lips and rolled to the side, like nothing had ever happened. Sai rolled the wire up and took out his tanto. Poison wouldn't work on Naruto due to him being a Jinchuriki. In fact, short of taking out his head and piercing his heart, killing a Jinchuriki is no easy task. But this one was asleep. Sai pointed his tanto at his target and leapt from the tree. The tanto glistened under the moonlight as Sai pointed it at Naruto. The tanto pierced through Naruto's ribcage and embedded itself deeply into his chest, severing the carotid artery. Naruto's eyes shot open and his mouth opened but no sound came out as he died instantly. Sai got up and left his sword on Naruto's chest as he approached Hinata. He brought a single finger to her neck to search for a pulse. He found none. He let out a breath that he didn't know he was holding as he made his way to his backpack. He took out a single scroll and drew a bird on it. Go to Danzo-sama, Sai said and bird shot into the sky with two simple words. Sai turned around to collect his things and disappear from the forest. This is a new low even from Danzo, Sai heard and froze on the spot. He turned towards the origin of the sound and saw nothing but a pair of glowing red eyes with three black tomos spinning. Sai quickly turned to the bodies of Naruto and Hinata only for them to shimmer out of existence. Genjutsu, Sai whispered to himself. Since when? Sai asked as he gripped his tanto that somehow was still in his back. The owner of Sharingan eyes walked out of the shadows and into the moonlight. Naruto and Hinata stepped into the clearing, completely unharmed but with annoyed expression on their faces. How long you ask? Naruto asked smirking slightly. My dear friend, Hinata smiled. You have been under our genjutsu before we left the Hokage Tower in Konoha, Hinata said and Sai was shocked. Tsunade-sama warned us about you and I didn't wish to take any chances, Hinata explained. Naruto's eyes glowed and Sai gulped, feeling lightheaded. Sai dropped his tanto and fell to the ground on his knees. His pupils were dilated and he seemed to stare into the nothing. Just my luck. Why do these things always happen to us? Naruto wondered out loud. He released a long sigh as he looked at the dark sky. It was full moon and its light shone across the vast forest. The leaves rustled with the night's cold air and Naruto sighed again. He looked towards Hinata who also seemed to be deep in thought, looking at Sai as if to solve a puzzle. What am I going to do with you? Naruto asked rhetorically, nursing his temples and shaking his head. We still need him alive to complete this stage, Hinata said, warning Naruto not to take rash actions. I'll keep him under my control and make him drop the exams when we reach the tower, Naruto said and Hinata nodded. What about Danzo? Naruto asked. I suggest we let things run its course until we can come up with something, Hinata suggested and Naruto nodded. Sai, can you run? Naruto asked and Sai just nodded. Good. Let's hurry back to the tower then, Naruto said and all three of them left the clearing. At the tower Naruto, Hinata and Sai arrived at the tower 2 hours later. Sai's conscious mind was being kept locked within a genjutsu and now he was nothing more than a puppet, waiting for his orders. Welcome to the hidden tower, a shinobi at the door greeted Naruto's team. Do you have the flags? He asked and Naruto handed him his 2 black flags. Very well. You may proceed inside and wait for this task to end. There are rooms available for you to rest, the shinobi explained and everyone nodded. I wish to drop the competition, Sai suddenly said, and the shinobi stumbled in surprise. What? Are you sure? He asked. Yes, Sai simply replied. Fine, I guess. Senju Naruto and Senju Hinata will proceed to the third task. Good luck, the shinobi said and watched as the team disappeared inside. Once Naruto, Hinata and Sai found their room, Sai disappeared into Naruto's dimension where he would stay for the next month. Next day, Root headquarters Danzo was working in his office when he was interrupted by a loud screech. He looked up to see a black and white bird flying towards him. Danzo took out a simple scroll and watched as the bird crashed into it and formed words. Mission accomplished. I never doubted him for a moment, Danzo smiled to himself. Fu, Torun, Danzo said, hitting his cane on the ground. In front of him dropped his most loyal followers. Being Operation Phoenix, Danzo said, and both shinobi nodded, disappearing from view. Soon, Danzo chuckled darkly. Konoha will burn and better one will rise from the ashes.